This is a kind of an archive, mostly for myself, but be cool if anyone gets value from it or has any interest in it, of an LS3 swap I did completely on my own, self-taught, YouTube, blah blah blah, um, into a 1989 BMW E30. It is super fun. Just hit 30,000, over 3,000 miles. Did my first actual mileage related oil change. Yeah, so if you like this or have any questions, feel free to comment and ask me. Um, yeah, super fun. And here's kind of mostly for myself. Not a great job recording it, but hopefully it's valuable.
All right, I'm ready. Yeah. Give it a little rev. Oh yeah.
So this is my LS3 swapped E30. We have a 1989 E30 325i. It had an automatic transmission when I picked it up for about 1,500 bucks in 2021. It ran pretty well, but the transmission wouldn't shift out of first gear or first and second gear, so it was really, at that point, I knew I wanted to do something with a project.
Let it go! Dude, no way!
So started cleaning it up, and then I actually moved to Denver, Colorado, and mounted up, got to the new house, and had a two-car garage, which it quickly became its home, and started fixing little things like the power windows, power locks, and then an LS3 with a TR6060 shows up um, from a 2011 Camaro SS with a manual transmission. This camshaft defect we'll talk about later. And there it is, sitting. I moved again in a new garage, and then we started looking at the car. Some rust spots here and there, but overall pretty clean. Um, we, I pulled the engine and got myself a welder to start working on the rust spots. This is just some pictures of the general where things go, keeping track of what is what. So a lot of these pictures are just showing there's some rust holes, but for the most part, it's a really clean car. It was sitting in a field for a long time and seemed like it was owned by an old lady for most of its life, and then transitioned to her son, I'm assuming, someone with the same last name. And then it looks like it got neglected for a year, which I'm assuming is where a lot of the minor damages happened. One of the door checks was busted through, and then the window didn't work at first because it was off the track, and a couple of damages on the bumpers and fenders. Um, so pulled the M20. Actually ended up selling the M20 for about 900 bucks, which means for the whole car I was in it for about 600, um, which means the engine was about more than 10 times that much. So engine and transmission and ECU. So it was worth it. And it's fair price. Started practicing welding. Just got some scrap and then was stress testing in my welds, cutting them for penetration, hitting them with a hammer. Again, this is the first time ever welding. So I decided to start by doing some of the rust repair. This is under the rear passenger side seat. Just some cardboard. Everyone's seen this before. Cleaning it all up, super thin, but this is where I wanted to start because no one's ever going to see it. Also, this sneaky little hole, I think that's where it all started. Just looks like it was never sealed from the factory. So started Sawzall and a little bit of the pocket grinder. I also removed a lot of the sound deadening, pretty much all the sound deadening in the car. Did the old dry ice trick. So here's my first real sheet metal welds. There's some contour here because the fuel lines go under this, and there's that little bracket that mounts to the fuel tank. So speaking of fuel tank, got my Walbro 255 set up. Then we move on to subframe. Did all the subframe bushings with the red Garagistic polyurethane. I think it's 80A, I think is the durometer rating. Um, Same with the rear trailing arms. Also did all the weld-in reinforcements that you can get off the shelf from, I think pretty much all of them are Garagistic. I think one or two Condor setups. I got a 3.15 LSD from a Z3, and then got the E36 dual ear diff cover. I had to modify the tone ring, cut it, actually just literally cut it shorter so that it would match the E30 speed sensor. Um, and it works great, no problems. And this is just fun stuff with bushings. Um, Decided to paint the diff. This is Detroit Alpine Diesel ceramic engine paint, basically. I just really like the color. Originally, my idea was to make the whole underside, all the subframe components this color, and it really pops with the red urethane. See that later. So again, this is pretty common E30 stuff, but basically I just did every single weld support for all the subframe strengthening that is available. And welds got better and better, basically gradually moving myself up the thickness welding. And the Prime Weld MiG 180 did fantastic, so super novice friendly. Originally got these Garagistic camber eccentric bolts, which I just eventually bailed on because I didn't like the concept of having to adjust them. So I went with the serrated adjustments, um, which were great except for the passenger toe adjustment. I think at this one in the picture right now, that for some reason has consistently plagued me is I must have not have got it perfectly straight because it's consistently been backing itself out gradually. So the solution was get the alignment right, and I JB welded it, and it's been steady for a while now. So this kit is kind of weird. I've seen some posts on Reddit too about asking how you're supposed to do this properly, and from my guess, it's basically welded on, uh, keeping it true to the original factory holes, and then just a hell of a lot of dremeling out that hole to match the um, adjustment channel. Pain, real pain. And welding it was not the easiest because it just doesn't have a good shape to interface with the current metal. So more adjustments, more reinforcements, and then painting it all black. And the end result's not super pretty, but now I've driven, spoiler alert, driven 3,500 miles, and it all works pretty damn well. So happy with it. Trailing arm, strengthening supports, same thing. This has been done on tons of E30s, just the boilerplate, everything you should do while they're out of the car. And I had to weld a diff mount for the dual ear diff because the E30 only has a single ear mount. Um, this is pretty ugly, but again, it works really well. And my theory was as long as it's stiff, there should be almost no play and no load. So um, yeah, it's so far so good. It's been some C channel, some angle steel, and a welded on nut, and that has been pretty damn solid. So you can see here, I also did the spare tire delete. I don't know if I would do that again. It made it easier working on stuff for the most of it, but at the end of the day, I didn't really need the space originally, and maybe in the future I have a plan for a very cool diffuser and center exit exhaust, so maybe I'll make use of it. But as of now, it's just kind of like, damn, I might need a spare tire sometime. So now everything's getting painted black, getting ready to go back in the car. Now I'm figuring out my fuel lines and what I'm gonna do with this fuel system. I ended up using the standard Corvette fuel filter and pressure regulator in one. Yeah, and here's most of the rear end without the axles, but really tight clearance with the serrated uh, adjustment plates. And the Corvette fuel pressure filter regulator fits right where the factory filter fit. So I was really happy about that, but ended up not using it because some other problems. But I think at the end of the day, I could have ended up using it. I had a lot of rust in the fuel tank and chased that around a while, and I thought originally it was the all-in-one fuel pressure regulator, but either way. So, firewall cutting time.
Yeah, for this part because it's less. Probably all this over here just because I don't want the hacksaw to shove through.
So this little Milwaukee grinder, this right angle cutter is awesome. Super strong and good for tight spaces. Yeah, cutting the firewall, moving the engine back about a foot is what I ended up doing from where it could sit, and I'm assuming where most of the Siki kits or CSX racing kits have it sit. So I have it a foot back from where it was bumping into the firewall essentially. Had to cut the actual steering column mount and re-weld in that weld nut or whatever that little square bracket with the threaded hole is, and a whole bunch of parts. Um, Bilstein B8 struts and H&R Sport Springs is what I ended up going with. Uh, Great, I love them. They ride super smooth. Eventually, I'll maybe have like a ride video with a glass of water to show how ridiculously good the ride actually is. Um, you can see the engine slowly inching its way back. I'm clearancing more and more at a time. And then the goal ended up being getting the shifter directly into the shift hole. So I have no shift linkage. The shifter is direct into the transmission. And then it was time to weld up transmission and motor mounts. This is 1/4 inch steel. It goes to the factory E30 motor mounts, and then the transmission mount uses the cross brace. I think it was for the transmission, or it was just a cross brace, but they uses those mount holes. And now we're putting everything back in. The motor mounts are finished welding, super ugly, um, but figured they were plenty strong enough. Um, and so far, so good. So we'll see. Using my level to make sure I get the rear mount tight enough and at the right angle. I think I couldn't find a picture, but I'm pretty sure I have like 2 to 3 degrees rear tilt. Sickie steering column, of course, or Condor, either one, the same thing. Then I'm starting to cut out some clearances for the little bulge in the transmission. And as you can see, it's really nice. It's not lower than the subframe. The Holley low profile oil pan, I think it's 3021 or 3022, but it's basically perfectly in line with the subframe, which is awesome. Rewelding up the brake booster mount, and then I'm moving over the pedal box, I think 3 or 4 inches, and making room for the headers. So that header primary is the trickiest one. Um, just it's there's a picture later, but it's an, less than an inch from the steering column inside the car. So I ended up with a 20 millimeter diameter stainless steel rod as the push rod extension to the Tesla iBooster. The iBooster is fantastic. Uh, Super fast. Matt had a really great video explaining it, and I followed his steps, and boom, it works awesome. Little sensitive for how light the car is, but again, you can probably uh, reinstall your own stock master cylinder and eliminate any overboosting. So more header work. The headers were really hard, and this again, this is still my first couple things welding, but ended up getting them to work, and they flow good enough right now. Um, and you can talk about that later. I've got some pinholes. That's my main issue, but I don't have any codes, so it's not leaking super bad. Um, but yeah, lots of tricky little bends and snakes, and yeah, good thing it's MIG welding because I had plenty of gaps to fill. Um, but again, super tight clearance. Basically, my rule of thumb for a lot of these really tight clearance areas was if I can jam a piece of cardboard um, in between and like freely move it in and out, I was banking on that being enough play. The ignition coil bracket right there is relocated, and now I'm confident where everything sits, so I started doing the firewall. Um, Again, definitely not a fabricator sheet, and I had almost no tools, so I just bought sheet metal, cut it, and bent it by hand with a little hammer dolly set. So not pretty, but we're filling up the filling up the gap and fully welding everything, so it got pretty stiff. The pedal bracket is directly mounted to this new firewall hoop as well, for the E pedal. That's the bolt for it right there. A pedal just from a Camaro. Um, yeah, this is the picture of the steering column and the header clearance. And coming from the outside, just more welding. Um, oh, I did make all new brake lines and fuel lines out of NICOP line, which was fun, a lot easier than I thought it would be. Bends really well, flares really well with, again, super fast Matt, the tool he recommended. It's on Amazon. I think lots of people have copied it, but it works great. And yeah, lots of lots of welding. Looking back through this, I was kind of amazed at how much bead I laid. That's a great picture of just how much freaking bead it was. And periodically throughout, I would have a flashlight on the other side and turn the lights off and see how much see pinholes and then weld them shut. So the firewall is pretty damn airtight. Um, yeah, this passenger side was a lot easier in some ways, but a little bit harder in others because I tried to do it in bigger, less panels, which meant there was less room for error. Here's the little transmission bulge. I ended up doing kind of a thicker, stiffer ring around that part, the rectangular part that's cut out, because that was a stiffener to begin with. Um, yeah, and that's pretty much everything it looks like that I welded. And that's with the subframe mounted, making sure nothing shifted on me. And this is clearancing the shifter hole a little bit just so I could mount that new one. And then we go to the self-etching primer and did a seam sealer on all the welds even after checking them for leaks or pinholes, lights, whatever. And then did the same Detroit diesel ceramic paint. This is installing the Chase Bays TR6060 2-3AN clutch line. And then there's the engine mounted in with the painted firewall. This is the shifter from Hanlon Motorsports, I think, or Huggins Motorsports, that just goes directly into the TR6060. Nice little Hurst ball, and boom, mounts up there with the rubber boot so I don't get any dust or exhaust in there. And here's the pedals that were offset. Um, so they are in the factory position. The pedal box is moved over, but then the pedals are jogged back to the right, so they're in the factory location. So it feels pretty natural. Um, I did the convertible reinforcements for the strut towers, and there's a Willwood clutch master cylinder, which ended up breaking and sucking. So now that's a Tilton clutch master cylinder. Uh, and I'll eventually get some pictures of that. There's the ignition coil mounted outside of the valve cover. ABS, which initially I couldn't get to work properly, but now is working in its whole. Willwood 6-piston brakes up front from Island Engineering. And here's some examples of how tight things are with the O2 sensors. And this has OEM catalytic converters from a 2011 Camaro as well. I had to reorganize them, but they are the OEM set because I was doing this when I was in Denver and I thought I might be able to do pass emissions there, so that's why. Um, but they work and the car doesn't stink, and that's the only muffling on the car is the cats, and it sounds great. So here's a view up, and just it's one X pipe and those cats. That's the only thing that's dampening the sound. Um, yeah, the exhaust came out pretty damn good and pretty cheap for what I got. It was a Speedway Motors exhaust builder kit with mild steel, and yeah, it does its job. Um, yeah, exhaust hangers, kind of the same strategy. Welded and then did a bunch of seam sealer and then painted over that as well. There's all the exhaust components done and dusted, as they say. Um, this this is the view of how tight that one bolt is on the cylinder head. I clearance that afterwards. More parts. Oh, this is the speed sensor. Had to fix the speed sensor on the differential. And it's just an overview of where we're at with the garage and the new wheels. That's right. That didn't even notice, but yes, that's the wheel choice is the Alpina replicas, again from Island Engineering. Um, they do not fit over the Willwood big brake kit that they sell at Ireland Engineering. So you need at least a 3 mil spacer, and I have a 5 mil spacer now because when I really there was enough deflection when I slammed on the brakes that it would just barely touch again. Another garage overview, every now and then cleaning up and making sure the workspace is organized is a big deal. Mishimoto E36 radiator with the fan controller, and now I'm messing with the wiring harness. So had to weld a bracket for the ECU because I really didn't want to modify the LS wiring harness. Also had to move the fuse box from the driver to the passenger side. So that's a ton of wires labeled. I had a big Excel sheet with a bunch of different tables for each bunch of wires. Um, Super big pain, but had to do it for the clutch, master cylinder, and the brake setup, and just the fact that there's no room. Got the headers powder coated. This is like one of two things on the car that I had someone else do. Um, and I don't know if I'd pay to do that again. They kind of look like crap. I rebuilt the axles after 1,500 miles driving, um, just because the boots had been torn and I didn't do it immediately. Camshaft, yeah, you saw the camshaft defect. I ended up replacing that, um, and there was no real issue. It was just that defect. The lifters were fine, but either way, I did an OEM in while the engine was installed. I did an OEM camshaft and lifters, so they're brand new. And that's the remote oil filter. This is the wiring if you want to use your C101 to an LS3 E38 ECU, and this is the fuse box you need for an LS3 E38 ECU. And now I'm taking it to Cars and Coffee and planning on doing a some fun drives and planning on doing a track day